Funny, Dan, one of the things with being on that island, I remember about 5 songs in and I was going, gosh darn it, I think I've just run out of lyrics. It's because it was every day.
Brian Johnson is a famous English singer, songwriter, film score composer, actor, and lyricist who's probably best known for being the lead singer of the rock band called AC/DC. Back in the year 2003, Brian was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a part of this band. He's also famous for his distinctive singing voice and strong Geordie accent. In 2014, Brian received an honorary degree of Doctor of Music from Northumbria University. Brian is a co-founder of the rock band called Geordie, which disbanded in 1978. It's worth mentioning that Brian's first album with AC/DC was Back in Black, which is considered among the best-selling albums by any band. This album sold more than 50 million copies.
And Mutt Lang, the producer, came down and he could see that I wasn't my chirpy self at breakfast, and he came down and he said, is everything all right, Brian? You know, because he's from City.
If you enjoy these videos, please remember to hit the like button, as it does help us out a lot. And comment below who your favorite celebrity is that you'd love to see in an upcoming video. His full name is Brian Francis Johnson, but he's also known as Jonna. He was born October 5th, 1947 in Dunstan County, Durham, England, making him 73 at the time of this production. He stands at 5 feet 4 inches tall, or 1.65 meters. The star sign of Brian is Libra, and he weighs around 68 kilograms or 149 pounds. This man is a huge fan of football and an avid supporter of Newcastle United FC. During the 1980s, Brian was asked to invest in the club after Jackie Milburn invited him to meet the board. Let me tell you that Brian was diagnosed with Barrett syndrome back in 2009, and AC/DC had to cancel many shows. Fortunately, doctors were able to prevent this disease from developing into cancer. In 2014, the singer became a supporter of the Yorkshire Dementia Charity. Brian is also an enthusiast of cars and races. In fact, this man loves to race with his vintage race car, a Pilbeam MP84. You might have noticed that Brian often wears a newsboy cap. Let me tell you that Brian's brother was the first to recommend the accessory because this cap would prevent sweat from coming off his hair and going into Brian's eyes while he was performing on stage. Bon Scott performed live with the AC/DC band for the first time on Brian's birthday. Brian has written lyrics to some songs of the band. However, Blow Up Your Video was the last album to feature Brian's words. From then on, Malcolm Young and Angus wrote the tunes. Brian stated that he ran out of words, and he also didn't like the pressure of coming up with lyrics. It's worth mentioning that Brian is a huge fan of musical theater. In the video titled Call of Duty: Finest Hour, this famous singer voiced the character of Sergeant Starkey. In 2005, Brian made a cameo appearance in the film titled Goal. In 2000, the autobiography of Brian, Rockers and Rollers, was published. During the 1960s, he was dating Carol and married her in 1968. During the same year, the couple welcomed their first daughter, who was named Joanne. Then in 1973, their second daughter, named Kayla, was born. When Brian was writing the album titled The Razor's Edge, he and Carol divorced. Later, he married Brenda, and the couple still live together.
I'm just struggling a little bit, yeah, and it was a real bad day, the likes of which I had never seen before, Dan. It was called a tropical storm, and the sky went black.
He's the oldest of 4 children of Alan and Esther. Let me tell you that Brian's English father was a sergeant major in Durham Light Infantry of the British Army, and he was also a coal miner. In 1996, Alan died. At that time, Brian was on the Ballbreaker World Tour of AC/DC. On the other hand, his mother was from Frascati, Italy. Initially, Brian used to perform shows with the Scouts. He was also seen in several plays that aired on TV. Moreover, Brian joined a local church choir when he was young. Later, this musician served in the Territorial Army with the Parachute Regiment. Gobi Desert Canoe Club was his first band, and he later became a part of a band known as Fresh. In 1970, Brian joined the cabaret band called the Jasper Hart Band, and later formed the band titled Geordie along with other members. In 1976, Brian released his debut solo single titled I Can't Forget You Now. Let me tell you that this song is the only solo single Brian has ever released in his career. Then in 1982, a compilation including 10 songs of Geordie was released as Brian's solo album titled Strange Man. AC/DC was a successful band at that time. However, after Bon Scott died, other members considered quitting. Eventually, they concluded that Bon would have wanted the band to continue. After considering various candidates for Scott's successor, Brian was selected. In 1980, they invited Brian to join the band as the new vocalist. Brian went to record the album Back in Black with the band. This album is the second best-selling album of all time. Then in 1986, Brian was seen on the music video for You Shook Me All Night Long. In 1988, the band released the album titled Blow Up Your Video. In 2016, during AC/DC's Rock or Bust World Tour, it was announced that Brian would be leaving the band due to hearing issues. In February 2016, Brian performed his last show with the band at the Sprint Center in Kansas City. Later, Brian recorded a song with Jim Brewer, Mr. Rock and Roll. In 2017, he made a cameo appearance with the rock band called Muse. Then in 2019, it was confirmed that Brian had joined AC/DC again and the band was working on a new album. In September 2020, the band posted a picture on social media listing the new lineup, which includes Brian, Stevie Young, Phil Rudd, Cliff Williams, and Angus. Brian is expected to make a special guest appearance in the American-British sitcom titled Laugh Riot.
And of course, when great things are happening so quickly, you never realize, dear Dan, you know, when something just, it's so fabulous, it just looks so easy. And then
Brian primarily earns money from music. Back in 1980, he earned $87 million from the album titled Back in Black, which he released with AC/DC. The next year, this musician earned $12.5 million from the album titled For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. And in 1983, Brian released the album titled Flick of the Switch with AC/DC and earned $5.9 million from this album. The next year, Brian's earning from the album titled Who Made Who was $16.3 million. In 1985, he released the album titled Fly on the Wall with his band and earned $6.2 million. 3 years later, he made more than $7 million from the album called Blow Up Your Video. In 1990, Johnson made $19.4 million from the album The Razor's Edge. His earning from the album titled Ball Breaker was $9.5 million in 1995. In 2008, he earned $10.3 million from the album titled Black Ice. The net worth of Brian Johnson is $90 million. Brian, along with his wife Brenda, live in his house in Sarasota, Florida. Brian Johnson owns the following cars: a 1928 Bentley Vanden Plas, a Jaguar F-Type Project 7, a 1965 Lola T70 Mark I, a 1954 MG TF, a Bentley Continental GT Supersport, a Petty Garage Mustang GT, a Ferrari 458 Italia, a Rolls-Royce Phantom, A Range Rover. A Range Rover Evoque. A 1968 Mini Cooper. A 1973 Citroën DS23 Palace. A Ford Popular. A Hillman Minx. An Audi R8.